Hey, friends. This is Martine Williams, and I am obsessed with all things mompreneur life and helping you to remix your priorities, your habits, your mindsets, and yes, even your relationships so that you can build a successful business without losing yourself in the process. I'm also obsessed with the color turquoise and lyrics of the 80s and 90s, but that's beside the point. Girlfriend, you don't have to hustle 24/7, 365 and continue to sacrifice your health, your relationships, and your sanity to be a successful mompreneur. As a small town girl living in a lonely world to a six-figure mompreneur, I am here to teach you how. There is a better way, and this podcast is your one-stop shop for all of the how-tos, the encouragement, the life hacks, the success tips, and of course, a little side of tough love. This is the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. So let's do this. Well, hey, friends. I am excited about today's podcast episode with a Turquoise Talk guest, Miriam Schulman. We really dive into email list and just really making sure that you are mastering what she calls her passion to profit framework and talking about prospecting, production, productivity, promotion, and pricing. And we talk a good bit about the importance of having an email list. And y'all have heard me talk about this before. How many of you are feeling like you are burned out on social media or you're not getting traction on social media, but at the same time, resistant to starting an email list, which is a platform that you can own. You don't have to worry about all the other things that goes along with social media. So we're not saying not use social media, but I think you will be intrigued and wowed by some of the stats that she shares with regards to social media and building your email list. So let me tell you a little bit about Miriam. She is an artist and founder of The Inspiration Place, where she helps other artists learn how to profit from their passion or become better artists. She's helped thousands of artists around the world develop their skill sets and create more time and freedom to do what they love. Her art and story have been featured in major publications, including Forbes, the New York Times, Art of Man, Art Journaling Magazine, What Women Create, as well as featured on NBC's Parenthood and the Amazon series Hunters with Al Pacino. Schulman's forthcoming book with HarperCollins Leadership, Artpreneur, is actually out now, and we have a link to that in the show notes. The Inspiration Place podcast is in the top 1% of all podcasts and is listened to in over 100 countries. You're going to love this conversation. Get your pen and paper ready, and let's do this. Welcome back, friends, to the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. This is your host and CEO, Chief Encouragement Officer Martine Williams. And today's episode is going to be another Turquoise Talk, where we bring on another entrepreneur, female entrepreneur, to talk about all things mompreneur life or entrepreneur life. So thank you so much, Miriam, for taking the time to come on the show today. I cannot wait to dive into some of these topics, and it's going to be super fun.
Did you call it a turquoise talk? Is that what you said?
Yes.
What is a turquoise talk? I love that.
Well, everybody knows that turquoise is my absolute favorite color. And so is it yours too?
Well, teal, but yes.
Okay. It's in the family. It's in the family.
Yes, my whole, yeah, everything.
Yeah, if you saw my office right now, everything is all around me. It's just a happy color. So when I was working to launch the podcast, I knew I wanted turquoise to be a part somehow. Not the name of the podcast, but I love bringing on Turquoise Talks with other.
Fantastic. I love that.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about you. I mean, this is my first time meeting you. I looked at your book and your website, but for those who haven't had access to that, tell us a little bit about you and your family, where you live, and how you became an entrepreneur.
Sure. So I am an artist. I haven't always been an artist because I was told you couldn't make a living that way, and I believed them. Yeah. So I took the practical route. And after college, I went to Wall Street because I was like, well, if the whole point is to make lots of money, where do they make lots of money? And that's where I ended up.
Right.
And after 9/11 happened, and I already had a child, and actually I already had two children when 9/11 happened. And I was on what I thought would just be a maternity leave, like an extended maternity leave. And 9/11 happened, and I was like, I'm not going back to that. I want to do something else. And I didn't know at first what that was going to be. Like now looking back, it almost seems obvious. Of course you were going to be an artist, but I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know because I still didn't believe that I could make a living that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't you love those naysayers in your life that tell you can't do something?
I love proving them wrong.
That's right. And you have.
Yes. Yeah. So when I first quit my job, I had quit my job, but temporary. When I first decided I was not going back, I had taken a job as a Pilates instructor. And because I really didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but that I needed to make some money. And it was in that job, they were teaching us how to sell personal training packages. Okay. Which now I recently joined a gym here in my neighborhood in New York, and they're trying to use the same kind of sales techniques on me that I use all the time. And I learned all those years ago. I'm like laughing, but it was in those moments when they were teaching me how to sell that I realized, oh, I can use these sales techniques to sell my portraits. Mm-hmm. So that's when I really dug in and became a full-time artist.
So tell me about your art. Like, what kind of art do you do? Are you still doing that alongside your coaching and being an author and all of that? Are you still doing art?
I am still doing art, but it's probably the smallest piece of the pie right now. I put a lot of creativity into writing the book, and now I'm putting a lot of creativity into my podcast. So it's not that I don't do art at all, but it's not the biggest piece of pie. And maybe this is something that you talk about, Martine, like how throughout our lives, we have different seasons where certain things get more attention than others. Yeah. So for 20 years, I was a completely full-time artist making a living from my art. I added on online classes about 10 years ago, and I added on the coaching about 5 years ago when I started the podcast. But I have let some of the things go that was taking up bigger pieces of the pie back then. And my kids aren't in the home anymore. I
was going to say, how old are your kiddos?
25 and 22, but I started all of this when they were toddlers.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine are 18 and 15. So I had my first one getting ready to set sail into, out of the home into the college life. And so we have senior night tomorrow night for his baseball, like his last game of his high school career. So we're moving into a new season and in transition. That's kind of what you were just talking about is, how things change. The thing you thought was going to be what you did forever has now, changed. And I do feel like with the pandemic and the last 3 years, like there's a lot of that happening.
Oh, 100%. So like what happened to me with 9/11, that's happened with a lot of people during the pandemic. There's nothing like a crisis to lift a veil on whatever's not working in your life. And that's why millions of people walked away from their jobs, and they call it the Great Resignation. Yeah. And millions of those people actually opened Etsy shops. So Etsy's sellers swelled from 3 million to over 5 million in a very short period of time.
Wow. That's amazing. I didn't know those numbers. And it's hard to leave those things behind too, the things that you thought would be there forever or that you would do. I have my own recent transition the last year out of a 15-year career into full-time coaching. And I thought I would always have that other source of income and community and ways to use my gifts. And so as you kind of transitioned out to, because I'm sure you love doing art, right? So
I do love doing art, but there's things that I just want to say and that I want to do. And writing the book was a very important piece of, so I'm 54 and I think you're younger than me. When you hit your
47, I'm not that much younger, 47.
But what happens to a lot of people, Martine, when they hit their 50s is we start to think about legacy. Mm-hmm. So this is like a common theme of people in their 50s. They're thinking about what is it that they are leaving behind. And so for me, it became very important that I write this book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that I wrote the book, I still don't feel complete. I feel there's another book. So it's kind of like when you have a baby and it was like you forget all about staying up in the middle of the night and everything. Yes, let's have another one. Right. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah. Awesome. That's exciting. So one of the things that you talk about is this passion to profit and kind of the framework around that. I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about what that looks like. What are those components to that framework?
Sure. So There's 5 areas that make up every successful business. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about coaching, selling sneakers, website designers, painters, sculptors, whatever. And that is, what are you producing? Production plan. What are you pricing it at? Prospecting. How are you finding your customers, clients, people to buy your stuff? Promotion. How are you selling it? And then productivity, which is different than production. Production is what you're producing, but productivity is how you manage your systems and your time. And what I've noticed over and over and over again is that when people are struggling in their business, it's because they have a problem in one of those 5 areas. But more importantly, they've usually misdiagnosed their problems. So I'll hear a lot of people say to me, if only I had a bigger audience to buy my hand-painted rocks, I would have a better business. So when they don't realize, no, actually that's a production problem, like you're not producing the right things. Or if only I had more people to buy my, let's fill in the blank, like $50 an hour website design. I'm making something up, but it's like, no, you would have to, you know how many hours you would have to work a week and never pee to get to your goal. So some of it is just like the simple math of, what are you producing? What are you selling it for? What is that equation if you're at full capacity? And not even talking about how good you are at selling, but even what are you selling? What are you selling it at? For some people, they're producing the wrong things. For some people, the pricing is wrong. And then for many people, they're trying to rely on social media, which doesn't work in 2023 the way it did in 2020. So it's a lot of times it's just they've misdiagnosed the problem and they're banging their head against the wall, trying to do it either in an old way or a way that doesn't work.
Right. And I think, I do see that as especially new entrepreneurs. And I do think there are a lot of new entrepreneurs after, again, the last 3 years and just trying to figure out what they want to do, is just like you said, kind of going to market with a product that they think is amazing and they think it's going to be life-changing, but the customer's not interested in. It's not something that they want. It's they waste all this time on websites and copy and all of these things before they really kind of test the market for it.
Oh, 100%. So that's something I see this a lot with people, all industries again, where they have these perfectionist tendencies. And what they want to do is they want everything to be perfect before they even bring it out in the world. So I call this Sleeping Beauty complex, because it's kind of like in the Disney movie where they take the fairies take the baby and they bring her into the woods. And next time you see Aurora, she's this fully grown, beautiful woman, never has pimples or braces or weight problems or any of the things that teenagers go through. And a lot of people want to do that with our businesses, whether we're talking about our art style or you're putting out a podcast or putting out whatever it is. We want to wait till it's finished. But meanwhile, if you don't get feedback along the way, you don't know if at the end of the day, you're going to have something that even is going to resonate.
Right. Yeah. And what my experience has been also is that my customers love being a part of the creation process. Like when I was launching this podcast, like them helping me pick out the artwork, and I handled the music. That's really hard to share with people, but, and music is my jam, pun intended. But they get involved more when they're a part of that process and co-creating the courses that I've written and things like that. So I just think it's super important for you not to wait. And I can be very guilty of that as well, because I just want it to be right. And I'm learning, and I've learned over the years, you just got to take messy, imperfect action and put it out there, because they may have the best idea for you, right? On whatever it is you're trying to create. Or you may see like, oh, that's the pain point. I need to focus a little bit more on that. So I know you talk about, like the first 3 surprising steps to starting your business that will empower you. Can you share, is that one of them?
Yeah. Well, so one of them that a lot of people want to skip, they want a real business, and they think a real business means they either have an LLC or they have a logo or they have a website. And that's not what makes your business real. What makes your business real is you have a business bank account. That you're open for business and that you're ready to take money, and it's separate from your personal account. And this is going to avoid all kinds of problems. Like you want to make an investment, either you want to hire somebody now to help you, or you want to coach like you, Martine, you want to invest in a coach. you need to know how much money you have without like saying, hey, asking your partner, do you mind if I invest in this thing? You don't have to do that when it's a separate thing. It's not just about the bookkeeping and the taxes, although it'll help you with that too. Yeah. It's really about having this physical container so that you have this mental construct, this emotional construct around what your business is, what you're taking, what you're bringing in, and what you're investing to make it grow.
Yeah. Well, that also kind of makes you like, it does kind of set the tone of this is a real business. This isn't just a hobby.
That's right.
This is a real business that I want to generate some real income, because I know over the years coaching, mompreneurs, there's always, there are some spouses that are not on board with what they're getting ready to do. And it's because they don't, men want to show me the money, right? Like they want to see the numbers. They want to see this is really a business. So by taking that first step, I think that would help with that conversation as well. Like, look, I am going to create a real business here. Can you support me in that?
That's right. Like that's, so I would say that's number one. Yeah. Number two, I would say build an email list.
Yeah.
Too many people just want to do it on social media. And I have like hardcore numbers that like show. Do you want me to share the numbers to really drive this home?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So when I first started writing my book, the average engagement on Instagram was 1%. Mm-hmm. And by the time I went to edit that section last year, it had dropped to 0.6%. And this is a year ago when I was editing it.
Yeah.
Now, what about the influencers? All these people who want to teach us how to increase our engagement. Mm-hmm. Average engagement rate for an influencer is 1.12%. That means out of 1,000 people, only 11 people are engaging with their stuff. Yeah. Now let's compare that to email. This is why email list building is so important and makes for new entrepreneurs, well, for everyone, so much easier.
Right.
So 100 people on your email list, and the average engagement rate is open rate is 24%.
Right.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's out of 100 people, that would be 24 people. Mm-hmm. So how many people do you need on Instagram? Don't worry, I'm not quizzing you. I have the numbers. How many people do you need on Instagram? Right. No, I'm not going to make you. I already did the math in advance. So for email, you only need 100 people on your email list to have 24 people. To get 24 people to engage with you on Instagram, you need 4,000 followers.
Yeah.
So which is easier first for people? 100 people or 4,000?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I know where I want to spend my time.
Right.
It's on email.
Right. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people this is not new news. I mean, email has always been the better for conversion and for sales over social media. So, and people get frustrated on social because they don't want to dance on the reels, or they don't want to do this, or they don't want to do that. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, what is it that keeps people from investing in that email list? Because it's so simple. It really is way more simple than social media.
They think they're bothering people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the number one thing I have to help my clients get over. And also even if they do it, they're not doing it enough. So like they'll send one email out a month. Well, okay. So again, let's talk about averages. If you're sending one out a month and the average, open rate is basically 1 in 4, that means somebody's only going to probably see one email every few months from you. Yeah. You would never only post on social media once a month.
Right.
Now, if you send an email every single week, most likely they're only going to open one of them.
Yeah. Well, for those of you that are listening and you've been on the fence, hopefully this will help you to really take that to heart and hearing the numbers. And if you're feeling that burnout on social or just the burnout in your business, like how can you delete some of those things or decrease some of those things so that you can focus the area on where you're going to get the most conversions, which is email. And you do have to have that mindset shift that you're bothering them. You're not. If you know what you're putting in that email is of value to them, then you're not bothering them. It's actually like less in integrity for you not to share with your email list the things that are working for you and that you know are going to serve them. So think about it in that way, and that you're landing in their inbox because you have something valuable to say. Now, if you're not saying something valuable, then think about that. How can you rework it to where it's worthy of them taking the time? Because women are busier today than they've ever been in the history of the planet. So it does have to have the value and the reason why they're going to open it up, right?
That's right. And here's the biggest difference, Martine. So when you send an email out,
Mm-hmm.
If you send an email to me, I get to decide whether or not I open that.
Mm-hmm.
If you post on social media, the algorithm decides if you even see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Even more reason, and this has happened, right? Where social media has had glitched and like nothing's working. It doesn't happen with your email list, right? And people will start freaking out. Well, I can't post today, or my ads are shut down for today. Like, you own your email list, you own that platform, so you have more control over it.
That's right. And the other thing is, people like to blame the algorithms. Let's stop blaming the algorithm. Here's the truth. So for promoting my book, I thought, I'm going to do a series of Instagram lives. And it used to be like, you show up and somebody else shows up and it goes into both their feeds. By the way, it doesn't even work that way anymore. Yeah. But right before you go live, if you pull out the app and you pretend like you're about to go live, it will tell you how many of your followers are on the platform. This is before you even hit the live button. Not how many are tuning into you, how many are on the platform. So I have 25,000, almost 26,000 followers on Instagram. Do you want to take a guess how many people were on the platform when I went to do those lives?
Less than 100.
That's correct, because you probably had the same experience. Like the most I ever had on the platform. And I'm not saying that they want to tune in to me. These are people just on the platform. The most I ever had was 65 on the platform. Not. So then I was like, I'm not doing these Instagram lives anymore. This is a waste of my time. Yeah. So I had a few people that I wanted to do something with. And I says, we're going to record something, but I'm putting it on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. I have not ventured over to YouTube. I mean, I watch YouTube, but I have not ventured over to putting any content on YouTube. But that's interesting. We'll have to.
This isn't going on video then?
We might. We might. It won't go on YouTube, but it will probably land somewhere. But no, you look great. You look great.
I got all the filters on. I know all the tricks.
Listen, whatever works. Okay, so what was number 3? We said email.
Number 3 is owning your identity. So I start with chapter 1 is choose to believe. Yeah. And I tell the story of when I was in 4th grade, my 4th grade teacher called me the class artist. Now, you could say that she recognized some talent in me. I don't think she recognized any talent in me, to be honest. The only thing I did as class artist in that moment was I got to glue the toothpicks onto a pumpkin for the jack-o'-lantern project, and she told me where to put them. So there really wasn't any talent involved in this. But when she said that, I chose to believe her. So much of what we do in life is about choice and belief. Mm-hmm. Just like I said, I didn't believe I could make money as an artist. Therefore, I didn't pursue it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But you were saying, what is the first step in when you start the business? You need to start telling everyone your new identity. So let's say you're deciding to be a life coach. Tell everyone, I'm a life coach. Yeah. Yeah. Don't pretend. Just you are. I am. Yeah. And every time you say it, you're saying it to you. You're the first person who hears it. You're saying it to them. You're saying it to the universe. Yeah. And you'll also get better at that. I don't want to exactly call it an elevator pitch, but that 1 to 2 sentence description of what you do, because people who are new, if they take 3 paragraphs to explain it, you really need to be able to say it in 1 sentence. Yeah.
It's true. And practice makes better, right? So the more you start saying it, number one, like you said, it gets into your belief systems, but also you get to kind of see the reaction on how you're saying it and what lands for people. Exactly. And what deer in headlights are what are you talking about? But I actually love when they ask another question, right? So you're giving them the sentence, but they're like, well, what does that mean? And then you get to go into a little bit more of your three paragraph statement, right. But you do need to have that 1 or 2 sentences just to pique their interest, right? It's kind of like the subject line on your email. The subject line is so important to get them to open it up to read the rest of the email.
That's right. So, I mean, you could say you're a life coach and they've never heard of it, but the next thing you say, should still be able to communicate it where they're not scratching their heads afterwards. Yes. It's like, okay. And they're just nodding and being polite and smiling, but right. They'll have no idea.
Awesome. Hey, friend. So you have been trying to make some shifts this year. Maybe you set some resolutions and you're just feeling stuck. you don't feel like you're making progress, or you're just not sure what to do. And you've heard me say this before, but being stuck is a mindset, not a position. And this is where a coach comes in to support you. Because here's what I know to be true about you, friend. If you could have done it alone, you would have already done it, period. And as a life coach and a certified PDP professional, I specialize in using a research-based personality and performance survey called the ProScan to illuminate how your unique personality and natural strengths, your work and life environments are influencing real-time performance. So here's what you need to do. Go to the link in the show notes and book your free clarity call to learn more about how I can support you in your goals. I can't wait to illuminate your strengths, cultivate your confidence, and elevate your life. So I love this idea of charm pricing, and I want you to share a little bit about that, because I know that is a huge, I don't know if you know that or seen this, I'm sure you have with your clients, outside of the belief, it's the pricing. Like that's the thing they struggle with is, what should I price this? Is this too much? Am I worthy of this? Is this the right value? Like it's just, it can create so much head drama for people. And I've had that from personal experience, but can you talk a little bit about what that charm pricing, like what is it? How is it different?
Yeah. So there's a lot that I talk about in the book Artpreneur around pricing. I actually have 14, what I call it Think Like an Abundant Artist, 14 lessons in pricing. And it's all based on people's buyer psychology, how they're shopping and how they're shopping now in 2023, because I definitely had to revisit that, like how people's habits have changed. But when you talk about charm pricing, so there's two things. There's charm pricing and prestige pricing. And you need to know what each of those are and when you should use each thing. So charm pricing is actually the practice, and we've seen this, of going like $14.97 for a pack of underwear, let's say at Walmart.
Right.
And so that is charm pricing. And you've seen a lot of maybe online course creators, they'll price their course at $497. Mm-hmm. So that is the idea of pricing something below a threshold like $500 so that people feel it's in the 400s. Right. Now, here's the thing. When you price it that way, you're doing two things. If you're pricing past the decimal point, like $14.97, that's what Walmart does. Mm-hmm. You're calling out nickel and dime minded customers. You're letting them know that every penny counts. So you have to be careful if you're using that kind of pricing. Are you attracting penny pinchers? Right. Are you attracting people who are counting every dollar? Now, there are times where you do want to use that kind of pricing. Like, for example, $497 is an easier barrier for people so that they will think about it in the 400s. But those types of numbers, $497, will be processed by the logical side of the brain. So that's what charm pricing is. What's prestige pricing? Prestige pricing isn't necessarily about pricing things high. Mm-hmm. Prestige pricing would be if you were pricing the same thing at, let's say, 500, full stop. Right. Now, they did research where they priced champagne at $39 and $41 and $40. And the $40 bottle of champagne, the even number pricing, sold better for luxury goods. Why is that? Because those even numbers are processed by the emotional side of the brain. So when you are selling something that you want somebody to be investing in it as an emotional purchase, mm-hmm. not a logical purchase, but an emotional purchase, that's when you need to use prestige pricing. So if you go onto the Rolex website, you won't see $4,899. Right. And people like that, it's like almost insulting. They're not counting every dollar. Right. It's like $4,800. So it's actually, I don't think the Rolexes are that low. I think it's more like 6,000.
Probably
right. So even numbers are better for emotional purchases like artwork, or they're investing in a high-end coaching package, perhaps, like you want to sell that at $3,000 even. If you go into a high-end restaurant, you'll notice they don't even use currency symbols on the menu. Have you ever noticed that? Like you go into a nice restaurant?
Yeah.
And that's because they don't want you to be thinking about the transactional nature of what the numbers stand for. They're not hiding the numbers from you, but they don't want you thinking about the experience in a transactional way.
Very, very interesting. I'll be looking at prices everywhere now.
That's right.
Trying to figure it out. And I mean, there are people who the work that I do with my one-on-one clients helps to kind of reveal for them, are they that factual based decision maker, or are they the feelings based, emotional or based decision maker? And so it's really like, depending on where they are, what they're going to respond to that number. Like you're saying, if they're more of an emotional buyer, then they're going to respond to one number. If they're more of a facts based, I need all the facts, I need all the features, I need all of that, then that's a totally different number as well. That's interesting. But it's hard to know that about your customer too,
Well, which customer do you want?
Yeah. You have to just pick one.
I mean, that's why I said you have to be very careful. If you are pricing your course at $4.99 and you're attracting people who are counting every video and, doing everything, penny pinchers, you have only yourself to blame for it if you priced it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong. Like you said, you just have to decide who is the client you're trying to reach. I mean, we're not trying to say one client is better than the other. It's just, who is your client? And that's why it's so important to kind of know that before you go to market with it. Again, another reason to kind of beta test some of the things.
That's right. So Walmart knows their clients are penny pinchers. And that's why even as soon as you walk into the store, the cash registers are right there. Mm-hmm. And then when they price things past the decimal points, because they know that you're counting every penny. Yeah. Now, if you walk into a store in New York, like Bergdorf Goodman, you can't even find the registers because they're minimizing that transactional experience. They want you to focus on the experience of the shopping, not on the transaction. Yeah. So they know they're dealing with a luxury market, and the reason people are willing to pay higher prices is because they want that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Really good food for thought for those of you who are listening when you're thinking about your product and what you have to offer. Just what is that experience that you want to provide? What is the experience that you can provide for your clients? And so price accordingly to that to meet those needs. So how do, you mentioned earlier, and it's so true. And I think this is another reason why people get frustrated with social media. It's ever changing. The market, how we market, how she buys, how he buys, it just changes constantly. And so you feel like you're always chasing after it. So how do you get in sync with the future of marketing? Like, how do you stay like in sync with it as it changes so much?
Yeah. So this is why, and we already brushed upon this. That's why I said we focus on email marketing. I got a lot of pushback when I wrote my book with the publishers. They sent it out to what's called a developmental editor, and she did not like that I didn't talk enough about social media. That I'm doing that in air quotes for people who can't see me. And she picked up from my book that I'm in my 50s, and her big red comment to me, or to the publisher, was, well, she's in her 50s. She's kind of old fashioned. She doesn't believe in social media. And so my response to that was, and this is why I went back and I found more research. It wasn't that I didn't talk about social media enough. It's I didn't make my case strong enough that email was the way to go. And so what I did was when I took that criticism in, I actually dug my heels in more to show why we shouldn't be relying on TikTok that could be banned in this country. That, here, and all this stuff has been happening since I published the book. Elon Musk and his shenanigans with features we don't need on Twitter. So, when meanwhile we have email, which people are so resistant to using, that is so much easier for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So how would you say if someone is wanting to start, okay, I get it, I'm going to still do social, but I really want to focus in on email. How often would you say they should be sending an email out to their
every week? Every week, because like we said, people may only be seeing that once a month.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think just like newsletter style is the best to kind of have different topics? Or I see you're getting excited about this. Maybe we will show the video because I love your excitement. Just the way you, I can see it in your eyes when something hits and you're like, yes, I need to talk about that.
Okay, stop calling it a newsletter. I think you were queuing me up. A lot of the resistance people have about the emails is because they're thinking about that newsletter from like the late 90s that had all the different sections and they overthink it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants a newsletter.
Right.
Nobody. So you don't have to write a newsletter. Nobody wants a newsletter. It's basically, think of it as the same kind of thing you would post on social media. Mm-hmm. It's a picture. It's a caption. It's a call to action. And if you want to make it really good, be sure there's a picture, your face at the bottom of the email so they're connecting with a real person, have a great subject line, and a button that takes them to where they can buy your thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, it's not more complicated than that.
Right. And like you said, maybe it's just the fact that you're calling it a newsletter to yourself that's making you think, oh, I don't want a newsletter.
That's
Why
right.
would anybody else want a newsletter? So change it, whatever you have to call it, to make it fun for you and exciting to land in their inbox. Do it.
And so in my book, I call it love letters.
Yeah.
You're writing a love letter to your client or your customer or your collector.
Yeah. I like to call mine pep talks because encouraging others is my superpower. And so they're going to be encouraged every time they open up their inbox. And so for me, that was like, well, that's fun. This a pep talk to me is short. So they're not going to think it's this long, drawn out email. There may be some longer ones, but I love that. I think that's a really, really good tip for those of you that are trying to start the newsletter, but you're having all these mind drama around it. Just come up with something fun. It could be turquoise top. No, you can't take that. That's mine. Just kidding.
Kidding. They can come up with their own thing.
That's right. That's right.
They're creative. Don't have to copy us.
That's right. That's a lot of things I will say as entrepreneurs. They'll say, I'm not creative. I'm sure you hear this with your clients. I'm not creative, so I can't come up with that.
Well, I work with artists, but here's the thing. I do not create. I have the other thing. They have trouble focusing. They have too many ideas. That's their problem.
Yeah.
So creativity, when it comes down to it, is really a survival strategy. And we are all creative because we're human beings. And when Darwin said, he didn't actually say survival of the fittest. He said survival of the one who's most able to adapt. Mm-hmm. So when things are changing, people are going to rise to the top. They're the ones who are being creative and able to adapt. And just know that that's what creativity really is. It's your ability to adapt and part of our purpose in the world. So I'm a spiritual person. I believe that we are all here to co-create with the universe and the divine. I mean, that is really our purpose in life, is to create things.
Right. So your clients are all artists?
My clients, they're all visual artists of different kinds. So photographers, sculptors, painters, digital artists. And like I said, their biggest struggle is that because they're creative, they have too many ideas and they have trouble focusing. Yeah. And they have trouble prioritizing because everything feels like equal importance. So for them, like giving them structure, giving them schedules, simplifying things so they don't feel overwhelmed.
Right. Well, speaking of overwhelm, one of the questions I like to ask every guest is on the topic of burnout, because that is part of my mission with mompreneurs, is to help them to remove burnout or prevent burnout. So I like to ask every guest if you've ever experienced burnout. And if you have, like, how did it show up for you? Did you have that feeling of just not inspired? Were you exhausted? Did you have some, emotional things that went along with that? And then how did you kind of work your way out of it? So it's kind of a 3-part question.
That's such a great question. And there were so many people experiencing burnout in 2020. Like in the beginning, we thought, oh, this is great. I don't have to go to the gym anymore. And I don't have to carpool.
Pajamas all day. Yes.
That's right. This has been amazing. Mm-hmm. And what happened to me and what happened to a lot of people is that my creative well ran dry. I didn't have any of my usual ways of filling that up and lifting myself up. I couldn't have lunch. I couldn't go in the city. I couldn't go to museums. I couldn't do any of these things. And it was almost like that. So we do a lot of Disney analogies, obviously. I do. So Moana, where the goddess loses her heart. And then I'm ruining the ending. Sorry, moms. I'm ruining the ending for you. And then we find out at the end that the goddess literally had turned into a lava monster. That is what burnout is.
Yeah.
Burnout is when we lose our heart. What did that goddess? I hope you guys have seen Moana with your children. Yeah, or you won't get any of these analogies. Okay, so
you're gonna go watch it if not.
The music is beautiful because it's the same composer as Hamilton. Yeah, Lin-Manuel. So, the goddess had loses her heart, which is her ability to create, to nurture the planet, to make all these beautiful life. So to me, during the pandemic, that was like, I had lost my artist heart and I became this burnt out lava monster. Mm-hmm. And then when you return your artist heart, that's when you're able to flourish and create again. So protecting that piece of you, that artist heart, that is the essence of preventing burnout.
Yeah. I've heard a quote and I've said it before too. It's not, we don't experience burnout because we're doing too much. We're doing too little of what lights us up. And that's basically what you're saying. It's not that we're necessarily overwhelmed and overstretched, it's that we're doing too little of the things that really light us up and that we're passionate about because we're, people pleasing, or we're doing all the things for other people. And we've put ourselves not even on the back burner. I feel like they're not even on the burner at all. A lot of mompreneurs, because they're so focused on pouring out. So I love that visual, and I've seen the movie, but it's been a while, but I love that visual of the heart. And I think that really does coincide with that quote really, really well.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you about doing too little to nurture yourself.
Yeah. And whatever that is, it's just figuring that out. And the women that I coach, that's usually part of the problem is they're like, I have been pouring out for so long. I don't even know what I enjoy doing anymore because I've been the mom, right? I've been the taxi, the Uber driver. I have all of these other roles and identities that they have forgotten just the fun things that they used to do. Little things, don't even have to be big things. They just kind of lost themselves in the process of being a mom and being a wife and being that entrepreneur. So that's why I'm so passionate about it.
And when you're hearing from people that they have trouble being creative, that is why. Mm-hmm. Because even people who consider themselves creative, they struggle. So we're talking about women, especially women in their 40s and 50s. They finally have the time to focus on their creativity and focus on their art, but they don't even know who they are anymore. So, and I talk about, you have to develop a signature style. And we talked about this as well. Like, well, you can't just use turquoise talks. I mean, that's your thing. That's mompreneurs thing. Got to come up with your own thing. But then to dig deep and find out what you are, well, you spent your whole life lifting everybody else up and supporting their dreams instead of really understanding who you are. So it's like starting from scratch when you finally have the time to work on yourself and work on your business, which is why I think starting a small business is probably the best self-development work you could ever do. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. I mean, they say, being an entrepreneur is the biggest personal development journey you'll ever be on. And it's so true because there's so many challenges and yet there's so many ways to celebrate. It's a journey, it really is a journey. And I'm a completely different person than I was 16 years ago before I became, an entrepreneur. So I'm completely different, not completely different, but I definitely have more confidence and it's been really, really fun and challenging. So kind of goes along with the territory. We talked about pricing, so I don't want to go back to the pricing, but what are you most excited about right now in your business and what you're doing currently?
Yeah. So I've been gathering people in person. This is something that I've always done for myself, joined masterminds or hosted peer masterminds. And I wanted to do it when I first started my coaching program, and then the pandemic happened. So now I'm starting to gather these things, and I'm not tying it to being part of a long-term mastermind, but just every time I travel, I'm booking tables I have a table booked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I have a table booked in Montreal. I have a table booked here. So wherever I'm traveling, I'm hosting these dinners for people.
That's awesome. Are they just a way to kind of network? Is that what it's for? Is more of a network, or are these people that are potential clients that you're trying to connect with?
Well, I'm giving them basically a short experience. They could become potential clients, but I do an intake form. So I look at their business before the lunch or the dinner so that I can come armed with strategies just for them and make sure that time together is a meaningful experience. But at the same time, as we talked about today, filling up their creative well with beautiful food and a beautiful atmosphere and feeling really taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, this was so good. And we'll include the links to how everyone can connect with you in the show notes. And I'd love for you just to kind of leave, if you had an opportunity to talk to all the mompreneurs of the world, which you kind of do here on the podcast. I don't know if it's reaching all of them, but it's reaching a lot of them. What's the one thing you would want them to know?
Oh, first of all, toilet training is not the worst thing.
What did you say?
Toilet training isn't the worst thing. My son discovering pot was much worse than toilet training. Okay. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, with the kids. I mean, there is never going to be a perfect time. Mm-hmm. So it's not that things are going to be better when your kids are teen. That's why I make that joke, but there's some wisdom to it because we think this is the worst thing and this is the hardest thing. I think the number one thing that I did when I started my business was I hired a business babysitter. So a business, instead of hiring a babysitter to watch my kids so that I could work on my business, I hired somebody to do all the stuff that I didn't need to do, that didn't need to be done by me. And by the way, it started off as a teenager at $10 an hour. That was my first business babysitter. And so they can take care of maybe 10 hours of work a week for you. And then you can spend time with your kids so that your business doesn't have to take away from your family. So that's what I want the mompreneurs to know.
Yeah. Start small. Every little season has its own challenges. You know, my sister-in-law has 2 under the age of 5, and she's looking at me now with teenagers. I'm like, look, every season has a challenge. It's all hard. It's just a different kind of hard. You're in a really, really hard season, but parenting teenagers is also difficult. So it's not that one's easier than the other. It's just different. It's just different. But I love that you brought back up getting help, because that is something that we don't give ourselves permission to do. We think we should be super women and, become super worn out women is what happens if you don't get the help you need. And it can start out small. Like you said, for 10 hours a week, imagine having 10 extra hours a week to spend time with your kids, or to spend time going to yoga classes, or spending time doing whatever you need to do to fill up your own cup and to make sure your priorities are staying intact. So thank you for bringing that up. That was awesome. All right. Well, again, we'll include all the links in the show notes for you all to get a copy of her book and to just connect with her on social and on her website. Thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been super fun.
Yeah, great. All right, friends. Well, I'll catch you on the next episode, and you know that I'm believing in you always. Well, that's a wrap, friends, for this week's episode of the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for following the show. It means so much to me. And listen, friend, sharing is caring. So if you loved this episode and thought of some fellow mompreneurs who could benefit, send them the link. Share this episode or take a screenshot and head on over to Instagram and share and tag me at Martine31Williams. We are connected on Instagram, right? It's where you will get all the fun behind the scenes of my life and business as a mompreneur. Until next time, know that I am believing in you always.